Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this week's episode, taken from the Tank archive, artist Hannah Black considers the racialized and gendered implications of gossip across history.
Witch Hunt by Hannah Black. Read by Caroline Issa. As Silvia Federici notes in Passing in Caliban and the Witch, her account of the historical entanglements of capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy, gossip was originally a word for the friendship of women, before it took on an uglier meaning. Federici argues that establishing capitalist society required the destruction of communal bonds that were largely mediated by women. Attempts to bring dishonor upon the gossip are ongoing. The witch hunt, then, was a war against women. It was a concerted effort to degrade them, demonize them, and destroy their social power. There is, in fact, an unmistakable continuity between the practices targeted by the witch hunt and those banned by the new legislation that, in the same years, was introduced to regulate family life, gender, and property relations. Laws were passed that punished the adulteress with death. At the same time, prostitution was outlawed, and so was birth out of wedlock, while infanticide was made a capital crime. Simultaneously, female friendships became an object of suspicion, denounced from the pulpit as subversive of the alliance between husband and wife. In the early modern period, the word gossip, which in the Middle Ages had meant friend, changed its meaning, acquiring a derogatory connotation. By inference, these laws suggest a scenario in which birth and death, sex and desire are technically and socially managed by women. Capitalists have attempted to regulate this management. You know this joke by now. The ideological infrastructure of the bad joke of capitalist gender relations includes the objectification of babies and infants to the detriment of their mothers, for one example, and a romantic image of marriage that painfully elides its contractual reality, for another. There are many ways that we live out these problematics. Past and future are two different methods of talking about the present. When I was last in love, I lay in bed with the person I was in love with and watched a documentary about an octopus that installed itself under a rock to lay eggs, and then died. This is the octopus method of child rearing. The narrator said, approvingly, that the octopus was one of the most loving and self-sacrificing mothers in all of nature. Love must be more than sacrifice, I said at the time, then cried for a year when it was all gone. Don't tell anyone. I read a chapter from Caliban and the Witch with students in Zurich. It was 6 days after the US election made Donald Trump president and 2 days after my birthday. I was dazed and sad, and the sky on landing in Zurich was a strange, oppressive gray that indicated neither night nor day. The meaning of words and skies changes according to the conditions of their use. In New York, a police helicopter flew low over the winter beach. In Zurich, I paid an unrealistic amount of money for a terrible sandwich, and a toothless woman with matted hair silently asked for money outside a corner shop by opening her mouth and her palm at the same time. The helicopter was a reminder that popular struggle can only narrowly or rarely win against the capitalist state's monopoly on violence, and the beggar was a reminder that we must go on trying in our small and stupid ways. Like writing tries to fly as low as a police helicopter, low enough to watch us grasp the wide, invisible sill of a tragedy that started, Federici says, 500 or so years ago in Europe and has not stopped, and pull ourselves through a wide and invisible window. The helicopter saw me walking on the beach, searching for the right rock to lay eggs and die under. The last night in New York, I slept with a friend in my cat-sit apartment, and the first night in Zurich, I slept alone in a hotel. The young people were smart and energetic everywhere. In Zurich, they were a little suspicious of Federici's arguments. Didn't men always, in many cultures, in many eras, treat women and children badly? And not only because of capitalism. Our liberation does not have to be grounded in any preceding factual reality, I told them. The question of the liberation of women does not have to found itself on an existing historical matriarchy any more than the question of the liberation of Black people has to begin from the superiority of African cultures. Maybe every bad thing ever said about us is true, and the bad things that are said of us are not said by the private gossip, but by the public state. But we still want to live in sunlight or salt water, and this is as factual as the airport border where the interior of the head feels clean and dry, exhausted. I am grateful to Federici for the image of the healer becoming a witch, of care becoming illegal and private, at odds with public life. I asked the border guard for mercy by opening my passport and closing my mouth. Relieve the scrubbed head of her historical entanglements. Its people, its many additional heads, have long traveled in fear of punishment or in search of rest. The gossip, like the witch, was persecuted as if she were an outlaw instead of at the heart of her community. Her superpowers hanging out, giving, sharing, spending, and wasting time together. She provides material for this activity. She brings news, warnings, and information. Worlds appear from her big mouth. In the 16th century, mouth restraints that prevented the wearer from eating or speaking were used both on European women who transgressed socially and on enslaved African and indigenous people elsewhere. This stopped-up mouth signals a war on communal forms of life, eventually pacified and institutionalized. The image of love dwindles from the community of women to the couple and their offspring. This remains the pretext for the ongoing ultra-violence of capitalism. The bold executive husband, his appropriate partner, and their appropriate children stand like figurines on a wedding cake atop a giant edifice of shit. Hard-working families, families not felons, and not an extensive family, but family as an extension of the individual. The gossip's social transgression is that she is very social. She is too social. She makes it seem like the social might have its own reality. It could be that capitalism is violent just because people are violent, but most people are not violent at heart. Think of the feats of community we perform daily, embodied in the gossip's willingness, part love and part labor, to make herself the conduit of other people's business. In the end, our opinion of the social conditions that prevailed before capitalism depends on our worldview. Some believe in something like Hobbes's imaginary state of nature, a wild and bloody war of all against all, out of which the benevolent capitalist state emerged. But there is evidence to suggest that in many places people tried hard to live together more or less cooperatively and peacefully, just as most of us continue to do more or less today. The reduction of communal life to the nuclear family, as in unit, as in war, combined with, as Federici argues, the drastic deterioration of women's social standing, produced a situation in which the conventional basic unit of social life outside the wage was idealized as a stressed-out and authoritarian provider living with a stressed-out and speechless carer. This form masquerades in many places as a Flintstones-esque natural order, back-projected thousands of years into the distant past, where, we are sincerely supposed to believe, the gender demarcations of capitalist Europe were upheld with perfect genetic consistency. This is the order in which the gossip who has never been marginal is made marginal or considered trivial or evil. Like the work of critical race theorists such as Hortense Spillers and Saidiya Hartman, Federici's research helps us to contextualize gendered violence within colonial violence, and in particular transatlantic slavery. The latter also represents a vast institutionalization of sexual violence, the inverse structural support of the white couple. The law known as Partus Sequitur Ventrem mandated slave status for the children of enslaved women, thus more or less directly making rape a highly profitable business. Against this logic of ultraviolence, among the most important aspects of the gossip is her role as a defender of not men. In a world where sexual violence is an everyday danger with few or no consequences, networks of gossips do their best to let each other know who cannot be trusted, where you should be careful, who has been lucky and who has not. Like a hero who is at home in the worlds of both the living and the dead, the gossip crosses back and forth between home and world, between the secret interior and the public exterior, carrying items to trade. Shared knowledge, a shoulder to cry on, insight, fun. The gendered distinction between public and private is still policed, even as it disintegrates, so her free movement between worlds makes the gossip a target of anger and derision. A certain contemporary atmosphere of blur between the public and the private appears to the self-appointed arbiters of the social as a frightening new development. Social media resembles, from this point of view, an escaped-eyed, no longer under the thoughtful control of the ego, resistant to the inner cop of the superego. Thus have native subjects always appeared. Gossip and jokes circulate wildly. You can't say that, but you can say anything, and the gossip proves it by doing so. No filter. I began this account of the gossip with her enemies to show how important her speech has been, although it is mocked as trivial. Hatred of gossip is hatred of women talking to each other. It is generally women who do this work of love. When we gossip, we share vital information. This one is sad, this one is in love, this one is dangerous. In most families, news of birth, death, failure, and achievement travels through the women. Communities of gossips nurse each other through the degradations that partners, bosses, and families inflict on us. Without the love of gossips, most of us would be either dead or dead inside.
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.